I'm Mark.
And I'm Josh.
And this is Alter Ego Comics TV. Today, we're going to be counting down our 20 essential Marvel Comics graphic novels. You may remember, if you've been watching for a little while, that many episodes ago, may not be that many, we'll call it several, we were discussing DC's catalog of the essential reads from DC Comics and Vertigo and how that has changed from 2014 to 2015. We talked about putting together our own list of essential Marvel stories to read, and we've kind of been throwing that around here in the shop for the last few weeks. And so we're going to do 10 today. Part of that is because I'm a little under the weather, and we're a day behind in shooting, which means we're a day behind in editing, and we want to get this up and ready for you to watch for this weekend with your morning coffee, or whenever it is you watch it. So, let's talk about Marvel Comics. The tough thing about Marvel is it's actually easier with DC, but Marvel has started and stopped so many different titles over the years that it's kind of tough to say, here is the essential Spider-Man story, or here is the essential Daredevil story.
Well, and also, they've never, so far, rebooted. DC, nothing in DC continuity matters more than 10 years, really. There's always another crisis. But really, Marvel's been...
All of Marvel stuff matters. It's just the time frame. Time has no meaning in the Marvel universe.
Everything gets scaled up.
Peter Parker was bitten by the spider 5 years ago in Marvel time.
No, that's not right.
8 years ago? 10 years ago.
10 years ago.
10 years
10 or
ago,
13,
because that's how long Cindy was stuck in the bunker.
Right.
All right, well, I will kick things off with Marvels by Kurt Busiek and Alex Ross. And Marvels, I don't remember which came first, the chicken or the egg. The Marvels or the Kingdom Come. Both illustrated by Alex Ross. I think Marvels came first.
That was my feeling as well.
And this was, Marvels is the story of the birth of the Marvel Universe, so the birth of the Silver Age heroes from the viewpoint of a photographer at the Daily Bugle. And you experience, it was a multi-issue prestige format limited series. I think it was 4 issues and a 0 issue. And it was just a unique and different take on the beginnings of that. But it was through the eyes of a human man. So the mutant, the stuff that really resonated with me was when mutants first burst on the scene, and like all of his neighbors are living in fear, and his kids are hiding out from mutants. So Marvels, I think, is as good as any other introduction to the Marvel Universe and the birth of characters like the Fantastic Four and the Avengers and the original X-Men and Spider-Man.
Yeah, and it did a great job, and it was the point of view, telling stories that we had read before, but from the point of view of a normal person.
Instead of a freak.
Right. No. Freaks! Mutes!
I'm a freak!
And also, actually for me, what I noticed when I was reading, because I'd read other Marvel comics when I was a kid, but Marvel's was one of the first things I read when I came back to comics as an adult. And I had never read anything from the Golden Age, and you get to see the flashbacks with Namor and the Human Torch fighting.
Human Torch, yeah.
Yeah, during the war, the birth of Marvels, as they called them, and it was just a classic.
Yeah. And
Alex Ross's art doesn't hurt none, neither. All right, next up, let's go for something from this century. The go-to book, if you want to understand the X-Men, is House of M. Actually, I wouldn't even say the X-Men. I would say the Marvel Universe. House of M has had ramifications forever. It was the first big event Bendis put together after he kicked everything off of this run with Avengers Disassembled, which is also a great read, but is a rough read for a first-time reader. It's basically like watching the last episode of a sitcom. All these characters are sad, but I don't know why. But House of M is a world where Magneto, where mutants are superior, mutants are the dominant race, and Magneto is in charge. Magneto, House of M, they're royalty, Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, and Magneto. And we see what happens to our heroes in this alternate timeline. And it's a little more than an Elseworlds, because it did have ramifications. House of M is where Wolverine got his memories back, which set off on a whole thing where Wolverine's character kind of fundamentally changed. I mean, a lot of the growth he's undergone in the last several years is based on the fact that he's more of a functioning whole person now, that he has a lot of his memories back. But the fallout for individual characters, I mean, the Scarlet Witch will never be the same after that. The fallout, of course, from the mutant race is huge. And it's just really well written and incredibly poignant to look at Marvel Comics.
Well, and you can connect the dots through every event that has gone on and the current state of the Marvel Universe, all the way back to House of M. And some people would argue that there are other larger events that you could go back to, but I think House of M really, as you said, kicked things off to the present state of the Marvel Universe. So we'll stay with that, and we'll go with Civil War. Civil War is we're going to say go-to many times, I'm sure, this episode, but when someone comes into the shop and they are interested in reading comics because of the Marvel movies, Civil War is the book that we give them. It features all of the characters that they're familiar with from the big screen versions, plus a bunch of new ones. There's drama, there's action, there's tension. It's being supposedly adapted into Captain America 3, subtitled Civil War.
And the rumor is that Robert Downey Jr. didn't want to come back for Civil War. And Joss Whedon brought him the Civil War graphic novel and said, this is what it is. If you want Tony Stark to have character development and to make, if you want to do something you haven't done before, this is what you want to do. And that's what got him to sign on, was the Civil War graphic novel.
What else is there to say? And I'm curious to see what they do to adapt it, to the movie universe, because it featured a lot of characters that we haven't seen so far, as far as the genesis of the event. There's something that happens involving a C-level superhero team, and there's a lot of collateral damage. There are lots of innocents, including a lot of school children that end up getting killed because of, as far as S.H.I.E.L.D. is concerned and the government is concerned, inadequate training and lack of responsibility because people are hiding behind masks. And you end up with this division between the superhero community with Iron Man, Tony Stark on one side, on the side of superhero registration, and Captain America, Steve Rogers on the other side, who doesn't necessarily disagree with it, but disagrees with the methods, I think, that S.H.I.E.L.D. is taking. So you end up with this huge, dodgeball tournament where people are picking sides and picking team members. Some major revelations happen, and again, stuff happens in Civil War that we're still talking about and we're still feeling the effects of in the current Marvel Universe. So you can go kind of from House of M to Civil War without missing a beat.
Absolutely. Okay. You all right?
That was a good break for me to cough. And
We'll let Mark cough here for a minute.
yes.
So, one of the challenges in putting together a list like this is there's a huge catalog of characters at Marvel, and every character has at least one or two or three or four great stories. And, where do you draw the line? Who do you include? So, we're going to try and keep it to one significant story per character, probably, or how?
Whatever.
We'll play it by ear. All right, well, I'm going to go with Planet Hulk. It is one of the best modern Hulk stories, and it's one where you need to know next to nothing. Basically, the grand poobahs of the Marvel Universe, Reed Richards, Tony Stark, Doctor Strange, Professor Xavier, decide that the Hulk is just too dangerous. He's gone on a rampage again and destroyed more stuff, and the Hulk, even as much as they care about Banner and they know the good things he's done, he's just a liability to the planet. He could theoretically destroy Earth. So they arrange for him to be shot off into space, and he crash lands on a planet, and then it basically becomes the Hulk is Conan. It's a different planet. The radiation affects him differently there. He's a little more vulnerable. He can breathe. He can bleed. He can also breathe there. And he's a little bit smarter. He's not really Banner, but he has a little more intelligence. He talks a little more than the regular Hulk does. And he has, this story went on for over a year. He has a whole life there. He meets people, there's trials and tribulations, and that's one of the best parts of the story, is that pretty much every character in it who's not the Hulk is new. So you don't have to have read anything previously. You can just jump in and follow a great epic adventure story in space with the Hulk.
Agreed. I'm going to go with Old Man Logan, which is a Wolverine story set in the future of the Marvel Universe, and I think it's accessible to new readers as well as seasoned readers. There are a lot of cool Easter eggs for longtime readers, but anybody that's seen the Wolverine movies, that has now seen Avengers, because Hawkeye plays a major role in Old Man Logan, and is familiar with recognizable characters within the Marvel Universe, should be able to get it. And it's kind of a way out there. I don't want to say post-apocalyptic, but it kind of sort of is post-apocalyptic.
They drive through a lot of
It's
wastelands.
a lot of wasteland. Basically, the villains have carved up the United States, and each villain has certain territory. Wolverine is now a pacifist living on a farm, and we find out through the course of the story why he has sworn off violence and popping his claws. And we also get to meet a blind Hawkeye, Peter Parker's daughter, the Spider Buggy, the Spider-Mobile's in there. Just a whole bunch of cool stuff. You get a venomized T-Rex. I can't even tell you how much goofy fun it is. It's written by Mark Miller, who created, of course, Kick-Ass and Kingsman, the Secret Service, and all kinds of wild...
And wrote Civil War.
And wrote Civil War, yes, as a matter of fact. So, yeah, we'll go from Civil War to Old Man Logan. So there you go.
Yeah, great book. All right, well, for my money, there are a lot of great Iron Man stories, but the greatest Iron Man story is the second arc of Invincible Iron Man. It's called World's Most Wanted. Is Secret Invasion going to make the list?
I don't know.
Okay.
Not this week.
Not this week. All right, so the events of Secret Invasion happen. At the end of Secret Invasion, Norman Osborn, the scummy Green Goblin, Tommy Lee Jones guy,
Cornrows.
yes, convinces the world, essentially, that he's responsible for saving them from the threats of the Secret Invasion. And Iron Man is played as the bad guy because he was in charge of S.H.I.E.L.D. At the time because of the events of Civil War. And see, it's all connected. It's a sequence of events almost. And basically, Osborn comes to power and declares Tony Stark to be the number one man, the most wanted man on the planet. And it's about Tony Stark on the run. You see him going from safe house to safe house, contacting friends and stuff, and trying to escape and find a way out because he's trying to protect the information he had as director of S.H.I.E.L.D. So he has, within his new extremicized computer brain, all of the identities of anyone who was revealed to the government as part of the Civil War and the Initiative. And he's basically trying to keep that information safe from Osborn the only way he knows how, going around deleting it off of every computer database where it appears, and eventually deleting it out of his own brain. So he's having to use simpler and simpler armor as he goes back. He goes through a laundry list of classic Iron Man hideouts, villains, allies, armors, and it's just an incredibly fun and really heartbreaking at certain points Tony Stark story. It's the greatest Tony Stark story in my opinion.
And that's...
It's volumes 2 and 3 of Invincible
3.
Iron Man. It's called World's Most Wanted on both volumes, parts 1 and 2.
Excellent. I agree.
And I believe they're collected together in the giant first hardcover of Invincible Iron Man by Matt Fraction, whom we love from Sex Criminals, with art by Salvador Larroca.
I'm impressed.
I know one book.
That's how much Josh loves that. He actually knows the artist on the book. This next one's cheating a little bit, but the volumes are not available singly anymore. Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale, who did Batman the Long Halloween and
Superman, A Man for All Seasons.
Yeah, Superman, A Man for All Seasons. And then Marvel wanted them to do some more personal, human stories over at their place. And so they did a series of color-themed books. They did Spider-Man Blue, Daredevil Yellow, Hulk Gray, and a 0 issue of Captain America White.
Someday.
Yeah, so really we're talking about Spider-Man, Hulk, and Daredevil. As standalone stories, they're excellent, but right now they're only available in a 3-pack.
A hardcover that includes all.
It's a hardcover. Is it hardcover or softcover?
I think now it's only hardcover. I'm sure eventually we'll see it in softcover.
But these stories, they accomplish what I think Marvel wanted them to do and what I think the creators set out to do, and that's to tell very human, emotional stories involving those 3 main characters. The Spider-Man story focuses on Peter while he's still married to Mary Jane, and he's up in the attic and comes across a box of audio cassettes that he had recorded for Gwen. Is that right? Or were they letters?
No, it was audio cassettes. I just don't remember if he recorded them or she did. But yes, it was stuff from when he and Gwen were together.
Basically, he finds a box of stuff from when he was dating Gwen Stacy, and he goes back and experiences those times, and we get to experience those as well. And obviously, Gwen is the great lost love of Peter Parker. So that all of them are love stories as well. Daredevil Yellow is about Matt's relationship with Karen Page back when she was a secretary at Nelson and Murdoch before she got into weird, crazy stuff. which we may revisit in this episode or in a future episode. So the relationship between Matt and Karen, and also Matt's early days as Daredevil. And finally, Hulk Gray is about Betty Ross's relationship with the Hulk, Bruce Banner, but more the Hulk. So it's Gray Hulk. So this is literally right after he became the Hulk, since he was only gray for a very short period of time. But those three, if you're at all a fan of the Long Halloween stories, I say stories, it was Long Halloween, Dark Victory, and Haunted Night.
And Catwoman,
When in Rome. Jeff Loeb's writing, whether it was stuff over at DC or Marvel, this was really Loeb and Sale at their best over at the House of Ideas. They did some really great stuff over at DC, and this is their best stuff as a team over at their only stuff as a team over at Marvel.
And I especially like the color theme is tied. I mean, Gray Hulk, yellow is because it's Daredevil in the early days. It's his yellow costume. Yeah. They're all really early in the hero's career, or at least the part they're reminiscing to that we're flashing back to. Obviously, the Spider-Man stuff was more in the present at the time, but it's very fundamental core character. If you strip everything else away, this is what they're about, and they're all about pain. Actually, it turns out.
Pain.
What number are we on, boss?
I'm odds, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You're 8.
I'm 8.
Yes.
Okay. All right, number 8 on the all-time list. These are in no particular order, obviously. I'm gonna go with Messiah Complex. This was an X-Men story after the events of House of M and a few of the other tie-in things. Post Civil War? I think it's post Civil War.
I believe so. Yeah.
Basically, as a result of. So this is spoilers, right? I mean, we can't tell the story.
Sure, the story's been out forever.
All right. So because of the end of House of M, Scarlet Witch said no more mutants, and then there was no more mutants. There were 198 mutants on the planet, whereas the day before there were millions of mutants all over the world. And that's a problem if you happen to be the X-Men, who are in the business of being the saviors of the mutant race. And Messiah Complex is the story of the first child born after M-Day. After a bunch of the mutants disappeared, there were no births for a very long period of time. Well, long in comic book terms. And this is the story, a new birth pops up on Cerebro, and everyone on the planet goes after it to try and find this baby, find out why it was born, what's special about it. And that kicks off a 4 or 5 year long arc of the X-Men that was just incredibly great. Messiah Complex is the best of the modern X-Men stuff, in my opinion, because the classic X-Men, what made it really resonate in the early days was the sense that they were saving people that hated them. I mean, they were a world that fears and hates them. They're trying to do good and stop the evil mutants, but at the same time, the average person would just as soon see the X-Men dead as see the evil mutants dead. It's very much the fear that you felt in Marvel's from the humans' point of view. And that doesn't play after a certain number of decades. In the 60s, it was a great metaphor for race relations and just the tensions in the U.S. But now, we haven't moved past it as much as we'd like. But the tensions are different. The X-Men can't be about the same thing forever. And this becomes a whole new thing about shepherding this race. How it's literally an extinction problem. There are not enough mutants to keep mutants alive anymore. And it's just awesome. Every X-Men imaginable pops up. There's time travel, which the X-Men always love. There's globe-trotting all over the place. There's relationships, betrayals, stabbing, mutant powers. It's awesome. It's everything you love in the X-Men.
All right, my final pick for this episode is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 by Dan Abnett and Andy Lanning. If you're a fan of the Guardians movie, you absolutely need to pick this up. It will bear some similarities to the film, but I think it stands incredibly well on its own. And really, Abnett and Lanning were doing amazing things with the Marvel Cosmic Heroes when nobody was paying attention, unfortunately.
Well, maybe that was to their advantage. Nobody was looking, so they could do whatever they wanted.
Well, I think what you need to look at here is that, you have a comic that came out in 2008 was turned into a feature film in 2014. And when you look at Marvel, all the stuff that Marvel is doing is based on their characters from the 1960s.
Right.
not necessarily the storylines, but at least the character. The characters have been around for decades. But Guardians were strong enough, and yes, the Guardians were introduced earlier than that, but not this version of the Guardians.
Oh no, yeah, the versions we see in the movie are almost unrecognizable compared to the original 70s and 60s
Right,
versions.
I mean, this version is the Abnett and Lanning version of the team.
Absolutely.
And you don't really have to know anything going into it. I didn't know anything about the characters. I didn't really read much of the cosmic stuff, but I was crazy for it. The nice thing about it is that Marvel has reissued them as deluxe soft covers. They were out of print for a very long time, but they're available now thanks to the success of the film. But as I said, if you're a fan of Guardians of the Galaxy, the movie, you really need to check out the somewhat source material. We'll just call it the source material. It is the source material. And it continued on for about 25 issues, give or take.
issues.
So it's not a long run, but some great storytelling, some great characterization. The dynamics between the characters was great. And that's where we get introduced to characters like Cosmo that everyone wants to see in the sequel, and that we maybe saw a glimpse of in the first film. So Guardians Volume 1 by Abnett and Lanning definitely makes the top 20.
All right.
You get the final word.
I'm going to go a little afield from where we've been, and I'm going to pick Runaways by Brian K. Vaughan with art by Alfono.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Adrian Alfono? Yeah. Did you do all of it or just some of it? Doesn't matter. So, Brian K. Vaughan, who anyone who watches the show regularly will know from Saga, a book that we both love dearly.
Anyone who reads comics regularly, not just watches the show.
Well, but we never shut up about it.
Yeah.
This is what I'm saying. Has done some work at Marvel and DC. He's obviously best known for Saga and for Why the Last Man, for Ex Machina, his independent work. He's done a few books at Marvel and DC, and the one that I think is arguably the best is Runaways. Basically, it's a new team book in the Marvel universe, and that's something really they're light on. You know, the last several years, most books have been made up of, even if it's a new team, it's a team made up of previously existing characters. This started out with a completely new story arc, a completely new team, all from scratch. And it's basically the story of kids whose parents have this retreat or whatever they go to every year. So the kids see each other once a year. They check in. You know, they're teenagers, and actually the youngest one is 10 maybe, I think, when it starts. She's little. And they find out at one of these retreats that their parents are actually evil supervillains who are bent on destroying the world or taking over the world or doing dark, bad things. And so the kids get it in their heads to run away. And it sounds like a very simple story, and to one extent it is, but it was really remarkably well written. The character interactions are great. The family drama, you know, going against everything you believe in. You know, your parents are suddenly evil. And I really like the way that a lot of it is tied into the Marvel Universe. Each kid represents, one aspect. You've got Sister Grimm, whose parents are magic users, and so that ties into like the Doctor Strange stuff, the mystical parts. You've got a mutant, who obviously is tied into the X-Men stuff, super science, aliens, all sorts of neat things. But at the heart, it's really just about friendship and family and forging a new life. Plus, there is a sentient telepathic T-Rex. Semi-sentient, not sentient. Telepathic T-Rex. Velociraptor.
Yes.
Not T-Rex. The T-Rex is run old Man Logan. That's a different thing.
Yeah, I agree. Runaways, I'm kind of sad that Runaways doesn't sell better than it does, and maybe this will be a boost to it. I mean, it's a slow seller. I mean, it consistently turns for us.
Over time, yeah.
But it's one of those that I think every Marvel fan, every comic fan should have in their library. It's that good, and it's rereadable. I think everything that we're talking about, the key for me to talk about something that would be considered essential is whether it's rereadable or not, and if it's still accessible to today's audience. And so that's why we're not mentioning things like, the first collection of Spider-Man by Lee and Ditko, or the first collection of Avengers, or that sort of thing. And while the stories were solid, they don't hold up really well. In the 21st century, but everything that we've talked about today, I think, holds up extremely well. I guess it helps that most of what we've talked about was published in the 21st century, but yes, you should pick up Runaways. Yeah. All right, so we're going to do a continuation of this episode somewhere down the road, maybe next week, who knows. where we talk about 10 more, but Josh does want to give an update on March Madness.
All right, it's all come down to this. Last week we had the Final Four in the Western bracket. We had Saga versus Thor, God of Thunder. And though he fought valiantly, Thor has fallen to Saga. Thor is no longer worthy. Saga wins and advances. But who will Saga face? In the Eastern bracket, we've got Amazing Spider-Man versus Batman. And Amazing Spider-Man triumphed. That was, by the numbers, Spider-Man is actually a better selling book for us. But Batman traditionally has much better, broader appeal and public opinion. So it's really a testament to Dan Slott's work that Spider-Man was able to triumph over the juggernaut that is Batman. So we're now head-to-head, Saga versus Spider-Man. You can vote in the comments below. You can vote in the link on our Facebook page, or you can vote here in the store. And we're throwing this out here too. If you're just offended on every level that Saga and Amazing Spider-Man are the two books that you can choose from, you can choose something else. Give me a write-in, and maybe a bunch of people will write in the same thing. Maybe there'll be a contender. If not, at least you'll let me know what you think, and maybe we'll read some of our favorite responses on the air next time.
Maybe there'll be a Ross Perot.
Yes. You split the vote.
Yes. All right, well, thanks for watching. We went a little long this time, and I know we didn't review any new comics, but we'll try and get to that next week. Hopefully you found this educational and informational and entertaining. I'm going to stop talking now. I need some drugs. See you next time.